In August of 1619, the first 20 Africans arrived in Jamestown, an English colony in Virginia. In the beginning, the newly arrived Africans were put to work as indentured servants. Less than 50 years later, the institution of slavery was well established and Africans were bought, sold, and treated as property here in America. By the 1800s, millions of Africans were held in bondage as this peculiar institution began to spread westward.
Slavery existed here quite early, with the Spaniards introducing it and then the Anglos institutionalizing it.
But you got to realize in San Antonio there were slaves, but there were only a few families that owned slaves, and most of those were of hospitality, domestic type service. We really didn't experience the same type of experiences that they had in places like Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana. But it was still there. Now, the discrimination was pretty much the same. The implementation of what they call the Klan or the White Knights or whatever you want to call them to control the African American population in San Antonio was there.
And then when the Anglos came to San Antonio and Texas in general, they brought slaves with them, and this would have been in the early 1800s. They brought slaves with them from Tennessee, Virginia, and different places. Moses Austin brought 400 slaves with him to the Austin colony. Austin, Texas is named after his son, Stephen F. Austin, and also a slave owner.
Travis, Jim Bowie, Davy Crockett, Milam Fenham, they're all slaveholders from Tennessee. And they brought that slave system from Tennessee to the new territory.
In 1821, Mexico won its independence from Spain. In 1829, Mexico abolished slavery.
Mexico in 1829 had its first black president and only black president. That's way before Obama. First black president in the Americas. His name was Vicente Guerrero. In Mexico, there's a state, Mexico has 31 states. The state of Guerrero is named after this black president. He's the one who abolished slavery. And he abolished slavery, this is really interesting, on 1829, at the time they were celebrating the victory against the Spaniards.
And they didn't mind the settlers coming into Texas, but they didn't want slavery in Texas. But they didn't really enforce it because you gotta remember, Mexico had Texas region, New Mexico as we know it, Arizona, all the way into California. So it was a large area to govern. So, but they did have laws on the books that prevented slavery. But just like anything else, the European type ignored that and they brought slavery into the regions themselves.
In February 1836, as he prepared to invade Texas, Santa Anna, a Mexican general and politician, wrote to his Minister of War and Marine, "There is a considerable number of slaves in Texas who have been introduced by their masters under cover of certain questionable contracts, but who, according to our laws, should be free."
They were angry because they had brought all these slaves from Tennessee and other places to Texas, to San Antonio. They were totally upset. And so that is the real reason for the Battle of the Alamo and the war with Mexico.
And understand that the slavery is the premise for which Texas is created.